Alright, so here we are, first day of school, and we're going to practice a video together so you can get the idea of what I expect from you throughout the year. So we are on page 5 of our notes, review of radicals. This is the point where you could pause to get to the right page and then unpause when you're there to make sure you don't miss anything. Alright, so first of all, quick review of what radicals are. Basically, it's just saying what times what gives you this number under the radical. Alright, under the square root sign. So the square root of 9 is saying what times what equals 9. So we know the square root of 9 is 3. And that's when you can just plug in your calculator if you're not sure. What times what is 16? We know the square root of 16 is 4. The square root of 36 is 6. So what I would always recommend when you're doing a question like this is to jot down all the perfect squares that you know, whether it's kind of along the side of your paper this way. Here I gave you a line to work on. So the easy perfect squares, you can just start from the bottom. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3. 4 times 4. 5 times 5. 6 times 6. 7 times 7. 8 times 8. 9 times 9. 10 times 10. 11 times 11. You probably won't get that large that you won't need those last few. I would say probably up to 64, the big ones you should know, but it couldn't hurt to have those. So here's why we use those numbers. Here's how they work. So we're looking for the square root of 18. The first step is to look for the largest perfect square that is a factor of the given numbers. The largest perfect square. So if we think about 18, we know 18, and I always like to do these little arrows there, it kind of breaks it up. We know the 18 can be broken up into two numbers. A few different combinations. The goal is we want to find numbers that have perfect squares in them. So if I do this, we know 6 times 3 is 18. That's true. 6 times 3 is 18, but neither of those are perfect squares. So those don't help us. Remember, we always want to look for numbers that help us. So 18, what does work? Alright, 16 doesn't go in evenly. 9, there's our key. 2 times 9 is 18. So that's where we are right now. The square root of 18 is the same thing as the square root of 9 and the square root of 2. So why did we pick 9? The reason we picked 9 is because that turns into just a plain old 3. Alright, really common mistake. It's not the square root of 3. That's not correct. Alright, those are not equivalent expressions. So the square root of 9 is just a plain old 3. And what I like to do is I circle it because I know we can't go any farther with that. We can't break the 3 down any further. So the square root of 9 is just 3. The square root of 2, sometimes people try to break this down further. Square root of 2 is 2 times 1. Neither of those numbers help us either. So 2, the square root of 2, that's as far as we can go. We cannot go any further. So that's all we're left with. 3, and then the square root of 2. There's our final answer. Right there. So the key is, if you find the largest perfect square that goes into your starting number, you'll always only have one line of work. Alright, so if you find the largest perfect square, that's all your paper will look like. Okay? So what you can do when you're on your own is pause and rewatch that. If you missed something, rewind a little bit. Alright, it's up to you to make sure you get this information. And I'll do my best to keep the video short. So we'll do a couple examples together. Alright, the square root of 24. We break it up. We want to see what goes in evenly to 24. So let's see. We know 8 times 3 goes into 24. But again, those don't help us. Those numbers don't help us. We know 12 and 2 goes into 24. Those aren't perfect squares. You only want to use perfect squares. And I'll write them down the side of my paper again. You probably don't have to. They're up above. But let's start looking. 49, too big. 36, too big to go into 24. 25, too big. 16, it doesn't go in evenly. It's not big enough. 9 doesn't go in evenly. 4, however, there's our winner. We can break 24 into 4 and 6. All right, the square root of 24 is the same thing as the square root of 4 times the square root of 6. Again, notice I didn't lose track of those radical signs. All right, we know the square root of 4 is just 2. Circle it because we can't go any farther. And the square root of 6, that's nothing. We can't break that down. Okay, again, what some people do is they look at that 6 and they go, oh, well, okay, I can break that down. I can call that 3 and 2. But that doesn't help us. That does not help us at all. There's no perfect squares there. So once we hit this step, we're done. 2 square root 6. Done. All right, moving on. Square root of 15. Breaking it up, we look at all our perfect squares here. 16 too big. 9 doesn't go in evenly. 4 doesn't go in evenly. Remember, you don't have to break it down. Yeah, radical 15 is the square root of 5 times the square root of 3. But those aren't perfect squares. The whole goal is to look for perfect squares. That doesn't help us. Square root of 15, done. Can't go any further with it. Okay? Next, 3 radical 12. So this one's a little bit different. Notice that 3 out front. We'll come back to that in a minute. All right, so let's just focus on the 12 for now. So, same deal. Square root of 12, that's probably one you can see off the top of your head right now. 6 and 2 doesn't help us, but 4 and 3 does. So once again, you see how both of those numbers still have the square root sign because they're still square roots. All right, the 4, however, that goes down to a 2. Square root of 3, nothing left we can do there. All right, so what we have right now is 2 radical 3. But like I said a minute ago, we don't want to forget about that 3 up top, right there. All right, so I circle it just like we do. Actually, I'll keep it the same. I'll circle with red. We'll circle it just like we do with all our other final numbers. So what we're left with is 3 times 2 times radical 3. And our final answer is 6 radical 3. It's not a plus sign here. It's not 5 radical 3. It's 3 times 2 times radical 3. And there's your final answer. All right, so last one we'll do together, number 4 here. So square root of 72. The number's getting a little bit bigger. So what you can do is always take out your calculator and try some numbers. So 72 is our goal. We want to find one of these perfect squares that goes in evenly. So 72 divided by 49. I'll start at the biggest there. That's too big. We can probably see that. Let's work down one. 72 divided by 36. And there's a winner. 36 times 2. So let's get back to our smart board here. And let's use those numbers. So 72 we can write as 36 times 2. So what some of you may have seen there, just a little side note, you may have seen that 72 as 9 times 8. And that's a great idea because 9, you know, turns into a 3. And that's a great perfect square. But the problem with that is that 8 you can still break down a little bit further. All right, you can break that 8 down into another perfect square, 4 and 2. So you have to do an additional step there. All right, that's the whole reason we look for the biggest possible perfect square. Because watch what happens. When we take that 36, square root of 36 is just plain old 6. It's done. That's it. All right, you can't go any further with that. Same thing with the square root of 2. There's nowhere else to go with that. You can't break it down any further. So your final answer, since we took out the biggest possible perfect square, here's my phone, the biggest possible perfect square is 6 radical 2. All right, it takes that extra line of work out of it. So use your calculator, all right? What I'll probably do, not right now since we're together, but what I might do on your homework, so I should say number 5, is I'll say, okay, try this one by yourself, and I'll pause my video, and I'll let you work through it on your own, and then when you unpause it, I'll have my answer shown there. Does that make sense? So that's another thing I'll do with these videos. I'll tell you to pause it, work through it on your own, and then I'll have the work shown here. So don't worry about that right now. But what I will tell you is on your homework check tonight, I want you to do I guess it's number 6. It says number 4, but I want you to do this question right here in your notes. So you'll show your work right here. And online there will be 4 multiple choice answers, and I want you to try to find the correct answer. Remember, if you get it wrong the first time, then you'll try it again. Okay? So there's your homework. You're going to get online. If you need to watch the video, any of it again, you can. But I want you to do that starred question, and there is a question online that matches up with that, in addition to a couple questions about your syllabus. All right, so that's it. There's your first video. See you later.